Well, hello, everyone, and welcome here to FNL Gridiron. Nick Anastas, Steve Beals with you. We are presented by Beals Insurance on the eve of the football playoffs, tournament statewide, and we as football fans looking forward to the next, 48 hours or so. We've got kickoffs tomorrow night. We'll preview those games with head coaches and media members, as we always do at this time every Thursday at 6 o'clock Eastern. In Division One, we finally know where the team settled. A lot of speculation throughout the year. Things came really down to the wire. And I think the tournament is potentially wide open this year in Division One. Bedford, the top seed, of course, the team to beat after a perfect 9-0 regular season. They will have a bye in the first round, so they have the weekend off. And joining them on the couch will be number 2, Exeter. They were also undefeated during the regular season. Londonderry is at 3, despite a Week 9 loss at Exeter. They still win the Central Conference. Pinkerton and Merrimack, that's the 4-13 matchup. We'll speak with Tomahawk head coach Kip Jackson coming up at the bottom of the hour. Of course, Salem and Wyndham, that's a rematch in the 5-12 slot. Manchester Memorial playing host to Winnicott, also in an East-West rematch there. And the game we will be at tomorrow night will be played in Amherst between number 6 Nashua South and number 11 Bishop Girton, a Week 1 rematch between those two Western Conference rivals. Scott Knight, Purple Panthers head coach, returns to the show at 6:45. And our first guest is going to be Mike Lockman, making his debut here on the show. He's the co-host of the Ninth State Sports Show. Steve, good evening. There's the Division One bracket. We'll talk a little bit about Division Two, I suppose, with Mike in a little bit. But your initial thoughts on how things shake out here, and as we look at the tournament, what are the games that you're going to have your eye particularly on?
Well, first, just things that kind of come out when you look at this bracket, the successful season that Alvirne and Memorial had. What a tremendous season both of those programs had. Their coaches have done an absolutely terrific job this year. I don't think anyone could argue that. So congratulations to both those programs, boasting really solid wins-loss record and just a continued positive movement for both of those programs. It's only going to get better for them. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of young guys that want to play football, in the future within that system. The other thing I would call attention to is Londonderry winds up getting the bye. We saw that had a great game with Exeter last week. They were able to do, and no question that they were banged up. It had a lot of players that were out in that game, and they needed time to heal. And when you look at having a bye here the first week, to have 2 weeks to kind of heal and get the program back, healthy again, that's going to be a big factor. And looking in the rearview mirror, that Salem-Pinkerton game where Salem beat Pinkerton, always knew it was going to be. It's always a big game anyway. But the impact that had as far as the bye is concerned, that was a big impact as far as the Central Division and how things laid out. Congratulations to Salem as well. We can go on down the list. A lot of successful programs here, but we've got a nice tournament that's going to start here. A lot of good games this week, and it's only going to get better from week to week, Nick. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, tomorrow night, of course, we are in Amherst. That's a neutral site, but technically a home game for Nashua South against Bishop Girton. And, of course, these two teams met in a close one in week number 1, a game won by Nashua South. How does that factor in tomorrow, Steve? We'll ask Coach Knight when he comes on a little bit later. Is that ancient history, that week 1 matchup, do you think at this point, not just in that particular matchup, but any of these matchups here moving forward?
Yeah, sure. Focusing on this one that we're going to be, kind of showcasing here Friday night, I think it's ancient history. I don't see, when you look back, it almost just seems like just eons ago, and these two programs have gone through a full season. Nashua South has had an amazing run, and then they got into a situation there with Bedford where they got beat. That was really, in my mind, their first Iron of the League contest that they had. But as far as Bishop Girton, that first game, they looked really, really good. But I just don't see from Coach Knight or Nayland looking at that game as anything relevant as we go into this. These are teams that have had a full year to develop, and both of these coaches done an amazing job with these teams. Both these teams looking forward to a big game there. As far as other games, other matchups are concerned, Merrimack Pinkerton, Nick. Kip Jackson's program was able to come up with some big wins. Definitely playing better football as the season went in. Going to see how they go against Pinkerton. I assume Pinkerton is healthy again. I don't know the details. We'll find that out tomorrow night. But to me, that's a big game. Alvern Concord. That's a nice game as well. I believe that is that in Concord?
Saturday.
Or that
Yes, that
Saturday.
that is in Alvin. That's in Alvin. That's in Hudson. That's in Hudson.
Yeah.
At Alvin. Yeah.
So that's a good game too. Two well-coached teams. They're going to be good. So as far as I'm concerned, I mean, you got Manchester Memorial Winnicott. They played. We covered that game. Was it 2 weeks ago or whatever it was? And I thought Memorial looked really, really strong in that game. We'll see what happens, but it's going to be very interesting quarterfinal round, because if you extrapolate out of that, if any of these teams that are playing this weekend come through with a win, we're going to have some nice quarterfinal games to cover as well. So, but the one to me that stands out is clearly Nashua South, and these teams play each other tough no matter what. You could have one with a not so great record, another one with a super record. It's just the emotions that go into these Nashua rivals between North, South, and BG. All those games are good. Have a little history of myself of watching a lot of those games years ago, and it just never changes. So that's what I see. You got Wyndham and Salem. I mean, any one of these games, it would be worthy to cover, Nick. It really would. So it just shows the breadth of the league and the solidity of the programs getting more. Getting deeper, getting stronger, and it's just going to see who lightning struck. Who's got the electricity and the momentum going into the upsets can happen, and that can just turn the whole picture all around. So don't count anybody out.
Yeah, I'd say on paper, at least, the home teams would be considered slight favorites, but
sure,
as you mentioned, we've seen certainly wilder things happen this season, and those road teams very well could pull off the quote-unquote upset in Division One. More on that in just a couple of minutes with Mike Lockman. He's the former Souhegan head coach. He's now the co-host of the Ninth State Sports Show with our friend Joe Marshallana. Focusing our attention to Division Two, Steve, that's a bit of a more traditional, smaller bracket. 8-team field. Quarterfinal round begins this weekend. All games except for one are scheduled for Saturday. The top seed is Plymouth. The Bobcats ran the table and looked good in the process. They hope to get back to the championship game. They are the top seed overall, and they will host Merrimack Valley on Saturday afternoon in the 1-8 matchup. Souhegan, they are the number 4 seed. They will play host to John Stark. The Generals got hot late. Souhegan, after a 6-0 start, hoping to find that magic at home. That's a Saturday game in Amherst between number 4 Souhegan and number 5 John Stark. The lone Friday night game is tomorrow night, Manchester West at Pelham. That's a rematch of a game we covered here on Friday Night Lights, New Hampshire, back in October. Of course, Pelham, they had at one point one of the nation's longest win streaks. They lost that in their lone loss in week number 7, but have come back, storming back really since. They won at Souhegan. They come in hot and are, of course, the 4-time defending Division II champions. And then Trinity at Bow. That's a late Saturday game, a 5 o'clock Eastern kick in Manchester. Trinity hosting Bow in the 3-6 matchup. So, Steve, what catches your eye there in Division II?
Well, just what Trinity's done. I mean, you got to give Coach Cathcart a lot of credit. He's taken this team and just continuing to build it, and they are strong as could be, and just rolling along here. That Pelham Manchester West game, don't forget, Manchester West was able to take Pelham, if I'm not mistaken, Nick, to a 6-6 tie in the game that we did at halftime, or pretty close to that. Didn't that end in a tie when we were coming out second half, or was it 12-6?
It was tied at halftime for sure.
Yeah, very, very tight. And then, of course, Pelham just came out and made great adjustments. And but Manchester West has showed that they could hang in there pretty solid, but they're going to really have to put together 4 quarters of really good football. Don't really understand what's going on with Sauhegan. They looked real good against Plymouth. They had a really, really tight game. But to me, Nick, the two teams that just have stood out that we've seen this year are Trinity and Plymouth. They are just mighty teams with just incredible accomplishments this year. But all four of these teams leading. John Stark, given a lot of people, a lot of fits, deserve to be there. Don't know that much about Merrimack Valley. Don't really get to see them. I can't find them on TV or anything like that. But, congratulations to them. But, to me, Trinity and Plymouth, Nick, showed me that they probably the favorites going in, but don't count out Pelham and Sauhegan at any time. These guys could. I wouldn't necessarily even call it an upset. I just think that Trinity and Plymouth are just playing incredible football right now. It was very impressed with Plymouth saw the Sauhegan game.
All right, let's bring him in. Mike Lockman, our first guest, joining us here on FNL Gridiron, presented by Beals Insurance. Mike, of course, the former head coach at Sauhegan, and now the co-host of Ninth State Sports Show. Mike, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me on. This is pretty exciting. I like to say I have the face for radio, or I guess as people would say these days, the face for the voice only podcast. So it's a little weird being on camera with you guys, but I think this is going to be a lot of fun. I appreciate what you guys do for football, by the way. I know I've said that a number of times on our podcast. We love your work. I love being able to watch the games with my younger kids. If we can't get out, it's awesome. So thank you.
Well, we appreciate that. Very kind words for sure. And I knew it would happen sooner or later. Our paths would cross here on this program. So thank you again for joining us. I'm not sure how much of that earlier segment you caught. We did break down the Division 1 and 2 brackets, but let's start, I suppose, with Division 1. What's the main storyline here, Mike, in your mind? Is it Bedford's to lose? Is there another team that you're looking at as potentially the favorite? What is the main story arc here on the eve of the Division 1 tournament, in your mind?
It's a great question. I think it starts with Bedford, right? Defending champions. They've done a great job rolling through their season. They've got tremendous firepower with May and Brody Helton, Matthews, right? So their offense is just as potent as it's always been. I think the thing that's fascinating to me about Bedford, though, and you guys actually covered the matchup, which is, they went against Pinkerton week 6, maybe it was. And that was a really, really good game. And Pinkerton was short. I think both Isaac and Morrison, right, were out for that game. Morrison went out very early, I think, with the hand injury.
Right.
So, you didn't quite get to see both of those teams competing against each other at full go, and that's football. But I think Bedford, you got to start with them. And I think that, you've got Pinkerton and Exeter, really, who have been tremendously consistent all season.
Yeah. And Exeter seems like it's one of those Exeter teams that is serious this year. Obviously, the record speaks for itself, and the win over Londonderry solidified that reputation. What about a team like Salem, Mike? A team that started 0-2, was written off by a lot of folks, and then they got hot, and then they got hot, and then they stayed hot, and now here they are at 7-2, a 5 seed, but nonetheless kind of a dark horse. What do you think their chances are here, not only this weekend but beyond, when you talk about Salem?
I think very good, actually. I've been highly impressed with Salem this year. And I was right there with everybody. I thought coming out of the gate, where they stumbled and knowing that they didn't have as successful a season as they normally had last year, I was like, ooh, I expected a little bit more out of Salem this year. But since then, they've done nothing but prove that they're elite. And I think that, we talked about how things start with Bedford and all the firepower they have. Salem might have one of the best players in the state with Kevin Tedesco. I'm not even sure if I say might. I mean, he is really, really good. You guys have seen him a number of times. And it seems to me like Salem's done some different things lately to either, creatively get him the ball, which I think they've always been really good at getting guys the ball creatively. But, in that game against Wyndham a few weeks ago, they also did a really good job of opening up the passing game a little bit. And
Yeah.
not that they couldn't, not that we thought, hey, they can't pass, they're just all keyed around Tedesco, but being able to show that that was a big part of how they could win a tight game, I think, a few weeks ago makes them very dangerous and really difficult to defend, right? You can't just dedicate safeties and corners to key on Tedesco now. So you got to pick your poison if you're going in there to play them. I think I think they're a very, very good football team.
Yeah. You mentioned Kevin Tedesco. He's the senior running back / linebacker for Salem. He's now officially a finalist for the 2024 Ukeka Player of the Year award. That list came out earlier today, and we could talk about that a little bit more in a moment. What about some of these road teams this weekend? If there is a quote-unquote upset, Mike, where does it lie? As we've seen some of these teams get hot late, sneak in at the last minute. Is there a team that can pull off a road win this weekend, or does the D1 first round go chalk, in your opinion?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, this would be a tremendous upset. So I'm skirting your question a little bit, but one of the teams that I have, and again, recognizing it would be a super upset, but I thought that what Merrimack did last week against BG was pretty incredible, especially given that they've had a tough season. And I said to Joe on our podcast, a lot of times going into the playoffs is not about how good you are, but it's about when you peak. And if Merrimack is peaking now, again, not saying that I expect an upset. I wouldn't, if you held me to it, pick Merrimack to beat Pinkerton by a long shot. But I think that could be a very interesting game where the road team maybe impresses some people and does some things that you might not expect, because they really put three phases together last week against Bishop Girton, who, if I'm not mistaken, I picked to win in Joe's weekly picks. And I thought that between 3 turnovers on defense, recovered onside kick, special teams, and what they did on offense, I thought that they did pretty good coming in for a 13 seed. Does that mean they beat Pinkerton? I don't know that I would sign up for that. Pinkerton is pretty good, but
Well,
I'm blanking. Who? Because I was thinking about this when I came on, and now, of course, I'm brain empty on it. Who did Salem draw? Salem's the home.
Salem is going to host Wyndham tomorrow night. Right.
That was the other one. Thank you. So my thinking on that was that, and that was a game you guys covered as well, which I thought was one of the better games of the season. That was a really, really good football game, start to finish, and it took Salem doing some things that were different. Like I said, right, like really relying on the passing game and doing some different things. And I thought Wyndham had a really good defensive game plan against them. So that's an interesting one to me as well. I think that there's, again, not that I would put all my money in saying, hey, Wyndham's going to pull the upset off, but I think that has a chance to be a road team that has a really good potential for a road upset.
Yeah. You mentioned Merrimack. You mentioned Wyndham. We're going to speak with Merrimack head coach Kip Jackson coming up in about 10 minutes or so. Steve?
Yeah, Mike, thanks for coming on. Been a long time waiting here. And for those who don't know your podcast, I know many people that enjoy watching that, or listening, I should say, to that every single week. So thanks for that. And for our viewers, check it out when you get a chance, because it's just the more that you can hear different perspectives about football, the more fun it really is. Mike, I'm going to put you on the spot. In order to make it a little easier, not just say one, as I've heard you talk, and I think we both believe, as many do, that you've got to have a good quarterback to win a championship. Very rarely in today's world, if you do not have a quarterback with all those tangibles and intangibles, it certainly gives you a real leg up on getting to the finish line. So rather than name one, because that might be, I'm going to make it a little easier to say, who are the 2 quarterbacks that you see championship written all over them? And if you can kind of venture out there, and who would you put on your team?
All right, so I'm gonna go back to Bedford on this one to start. I'm gonna go with Jack May.
But you got 2.
Bedford.
You got 2. Yeah.
So I'm gonna start with him. I have a lot of respect for him. I think he's done well. After sitting under God, I forget the kid's name who played for a couple of years there previously, but he waited his turn to start. Thank you,
Danny
Black.
Black.
Right, he was tremendous. And so May waited his time, and he's done great this season. The thing that I like about the way he plays is that Coach Matthews doesn't call on him to win games, but he's capable of doing it. And when he does need to show up and throw the ball or use his legs, he's really, really good. So I respect that tremendously. Right, he doesn't need to be a guy that goes out there and throws 37 balls a game.
Right.
He can do really good on the play faking and the play action and the option stuff. And I just like him. He's a well-rounded kid. The other guy, quarterback wise, that it's a little bit of a toss up.
That's why I
want to
said
say Nate Bowen. Yeah, I want to say Nate Bowen from BG, but he's only a sophomore. And I really like him. He's been awesome this season. But I'm gonna throw a curveball in there, and I'm actually gonna say Michael Karen from Exeter.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is almost very similar to what I said about May, is that when you think Exeter, you think straight T, double tight end, pound. But look what they did last week. And he was 10 of 15, and 2 or 3 of those balls were just happened to be tough drops by the receivers, but they were on the mark.
Yeah.
And man, I'll tell you what, when you're going into the playoffs against a team like Exeter that runs that really disciplined straight T / wing T type offense, and you've got a kid that can do that kind of damage in the air as well, he doesn't need to be 21 of 35 for 270. He might be, 8 of 10 with 2 touchdown passes, to one of those big tight ends like Graney or somebody. So I know those are both a little bit not like traditional picks, but honestly, I think that's where I'm leaning.
I think it's hard. I agree with you, by the way. He kind of solidified that with me last week. Seeing the sort of tempered discipline that he carries. So it's more than just the physical attributes that he has as far as throwing the ball, like you said. It's just he comes off the field to Coach Ball. Coach Ball has been amazing to me, how he can develop a great relationship. So many of our coaches do in Division I and II. But that was just really impressive. I'm going to go the other side of the ball now. And as far as a linebacker core, if you were going to be looking as a linebacker core, the best 2 linebacker cores that you see, or if you want to jump to the defensive bookend package, what defense do you just see within that front 7? Why don't we just say that looks to you that they can stop anybody in the league? And remember, Londonderry and Exeter both haven't played Bedford, so that's still a wild card out there. So with that context, what defensive interior package would you say is championship material?
I love and I'm I'm gonna break your rule here.
I knew as a coach you'd like this. I knew as a coach you'd like this.
Season. I love Bedford's defense, especially like you said, their interior. I've been saying since I saw them week 1 or 2, I was like, their interior is as good as it's ever been. And Londonderry's front 7 is really, really good. And they have a couple of standout players on the D line, but they're very good, like in terms of their discipline and their run fits and like all the little things that defenses have to do right. I've been so impressed with the way Coach Lozon coaches up that unit over there, because they just reload that defense. It's excellent every year. So maybe I lean Londonderry. Maybe that's what I'm saying. But I do like Bedford. And I really like Pinkerton's front too. I love the Caruso kid that plays for Pinkerton, the big kind of D end. Anthony. I get the brothers mixed up sometimes. I think Anthony is the big D end. He's also really good.
Yeah. And James is good as well, his brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going to say that, Nick. I'm going to throw one name just out there, even though I'm supposed to ask questions. I'm going to use the name McDonald. Don't forget this young quarterback, because I've watched this kid, and he's got from Pinkerton. He is terrific. And when he's on his high game and he's got those assets on the offensive side of the ball that he's got, let's see what happens there. But he impressed me as well as so many others did. Mike, last question. When you look at what NHIA has done with the tournament, specifically Division I, and they tried the 4, the 4 divisions. The 4 conferences, and now they went to 3, and we have this system. Have we arrived at the best we can, the best possible situation, you think, or is there something missing out there maybe that we could even enhance on that? What are your thoughts on that as this thing has evolved over the last 5 years?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'll answer the second part of your question first, which is, I think the NHIAA has done a lot of experimenting over the past decades, right? I mean, they've for better or worse, they've changed up their format every 2 to 4 years as the cycles have ended, and they've tried to make sure they're addressing issues. And as you do that, another issue pops up that you didn't anticipate. And I always think that, hey, if there was a perfect way of doing it out there, everybody would be using it. But that being said, I really like what they've adapted the last few years, right? You go back a couple years ago to number 10 Bedford, coming on, like I said at the beginning, right? Peaking at the right time and just having this tremendous storyline in the postseason. You don't see that happening when I go back a decade or so, when there weren't even quarterfinal games. There were just semifinal finals in a lot of these different divisions. And we still have that today in some of the lower divisions. But as much as people might look at it as a weakness to say, hey, how did a 3 and whatever team get in there, or a 4 and 4 team get in there? And there's legitimacy to those questions. But hey, you know what? There's 13 teams that are all playing more football than they otherwise would have. And more football for the kids is always great. And if you can get something even close to a storyline like we had a couple years ago, where there was that number 10 Bedford team that just came through and ripped it up, I think that's great for New Hampshire football. So
my thoughts are that they've done a fabulous job with this preliminary round, because what you've done is, if a team suffered like some key injuries on their top players, and they were able to sneak in, and then they become healthy at the end of the year, it just it gives that program opportunity to sneak in. I give them an A+ on how they've morphed this thing into what it is today. But this preliminary round is very important. It kind of drove me crazy back when the SEC would have sports writers. Nope, nothing. I don't mean any criticism, Nick, at all. But sports writers, having well, actually, you're a sports broadcaster. That's different. You're right, Nick. I'm sorry. I just throw that in there. But seriously, the preliminary round is kind of like having the 12 teams now, which we have this year in the NCAA. It's giving that dark horse, giving that Cinderella team that might have had one, unique situation. I applaud them, and I agree with you, Mike, wholeheartedly. At least they're willing to have the courage to try to change things and respond, to your point. So hey,
100%.
I really enjoyed having you on. Tell your partner there that we'd love to have him on again. He also does a super job. Great having you on as well. And really appreciate all the nice comments you say on air about FNL. We feel the same way about you guys. So thanks again. I'll hand it back to Nick.
Yeah, thanks. This is always fun. I'm happy to help anytime, guys. I enjoy talking to you.
Yeah, same here.
Mike, thank you very much. And we'll see you down the road for sure. We appreciate it. And again, Mike Lockman, former head coach of Sauhegan, now co-host of the 9th State Sports Show. When we come back, we welcome in head coach Kip Jackson, friend of the show, finally making an appearance this season. His team sneaks into the playoffs as the final scene in Division I, and they look for the upset tomorrow in Derry against Pinkerton. Coach, on the other side, you are watching FNL Gridiron, presented by Beals Insurance.
Our broadcast today, as it always is brought to you by Beals Insurance Agency, with locations now in both Bedford and Londonderry. Whether you need home, auto, or business insurance, Beals Insurance will get you both the price and quality coverage that's right for you. Just call 603-471-9999 or visit BealsInsurance.com to request a free quote and start saving money today. Again, that's BealsInsurance.com. The New Hampshire Tomahawks promote the highest level of club lacrosse competition, not just in the state, but in the country. Looking to get recruited? Director Chris Cameron keeps an open dialogue with the nation's top college lacrosse coaches. Over 400 New Hampshire Tomahawks alumni have played at the college level, including the ACC, Big East, Big Ten, Ivy, NESCAC, NE10, and more. The New Hampshire Tomahawks coaching staff has over 100 coaches, including current high school, varsity, and college coaches. The Tomahawks offer training for players of all ages, clinics, camps, and leagues, along with spring, summer, and fall elite teams. So play with the best. The New Hampshire Tomahawks, showcase and development for college lacrosse. Visit NewHampshireTomahawks.com and girls.nhtomahawks.com. How can you reach your team's fundraising goals at no risk and no cost? MG Sports offers a variety of products to make your team's fundraiser a success. Their products include discount tickets, cards, and calendar raffles to hundreds of local merchants throughout the New England area. Don't waste another season. Raise more funds than ever before and become another football program in New Hampshire that sets fundraising records every season. MG Sports, fundraising made easy. Visit mgsportsfundraising.com to start raising money for your team today. Colonial Printing is family owned and celebrating 50 years of quality print services for New Hampshire businesses and can help yours as well. Whether it's creative design, digital or offset printing, or banners and signs, with state-of-the-art technology, unlimited industry sources, and the ability to think outside the box, Colonial Printing will help you get your job done. To see their full list of services, promo products, and portfolio, or to request an estimate, visit colonialprintingnh.com. That's colonialprintingnh.com.
Nick and Asta, Steve Beals back with you. It's FNL Gridiron every Thursday, 6 o'clock from now until the championship, as we are set for the tournaments. They kick off statewide tomorrow, all four divisions in action this weekend. We thank Mike Lockman for coming on. Some good stuff there.
Yeah.
With the former Sauhegan head coach. Check out his stuff. He's the co-host of the Ninth State Sports Show with our friend, Joe Marcellana. In a moment, we'll speak with Kip Jackson of Merrimack. We're getting him situated behind the scenes. We've got Scott Knight, the longtime head coach of Nashua South, coming on at 6:45. And a reminder, tomorrow night, we are in Amherst as number 6 Nashua South plays host to number 11 Bishop Girton. A little bit earlier of a kick tomorrow night, 6:30 Eastern. Our coverage begins with our pregame at 6:15. That's our Friday Night Lights New Hampshire game of the week, presented by Beals Insurance. All right, let's bring him back in for the first time this season. Longtime friend of the show, Merrimack head coach Kip Jackson, somewhere there in the darkness on his ride home from practice. Coach Jackson,
There he
how
is.
are you? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you. Great to
Okay.
talk to you guys. Thanks for having me on again.
Well,
Great to
congratulations
see you.
on grabbing that final seed, Coach. Getting your team to another postseason seems to be like the standard for Merrimack. Your club seemingly has gotten hot, an impressive win in week number 9 to get in. Mike Lockman said your team may be peaking at the right time. Do you agree with that?
Well, I never disagree with Coach Lockman. So, yeah, we definitely have gotten better over the last few weeks. I think the kids have shown a lot of resilience after losing a couple of close games and continue to work hard and try to get better.
Yeah, you mentioned the close games, several close games when you look at the final score sheet. Did that process, despite the loss, kind of harden your team, strengthen your team, get them used to that fourth quarter pressure? Can that be a good thing sometimes, those close losses?
Yeah, definitely can be a good thing when you're used to playing close games. Some of the teams that are much better than us or have much better records than us, they haven't played many close games. So your hope is, as Merrimack plays Pinkerton, we hopefully can keep it a close game, and we'll be in a situation that maybe we've been in more frequently than they have.
Coach, we have not seen your team live, or we've not covered them this season. So I'm just going to ask you some basic questions here. How would you describe your squad? What are the strengths? What are the areas of improvement? And what are you going to lean on without giving anything away, obviously, tomorrow night at Pinkerton?
Yeah, it feels like we're the Forrest Gump team this year. We're like a box of chocolates. I really don't know what you're going to get from quarter to quarter with us. Sometimes at points in time this season, I think we've played really good defense and also shown the ability to move the ball either through the air or running the ball. So hopefully we'll be able to see a team that can play 4 quarters tomorrow night in Derry.
Steve?
In terms of what
Coach.
you want to look for, Sahil Mujawar, who's our quarterback, will probably be at the center of pretty much everything we do on offense, whether it's running the ball or throwing the ball. And then on defense, our defensive line is pretty good, especially on the interior of our D line. Frankie, Nathan, but our players will against a team like Pinkerton.
Did you say you hand over to me, Nick? Okay, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Hey, Coach, great to have you on again, as always. Congratulations on finishing strong. I kind of want to lead into that concept as far as games. One of the things that I've seen is oftentimes you guys come out really strong in the second half, and it's been something that goes beyond just this year. It's been your teams seem to. What is the recipe that you? Is it your half time speeches? Is it adjustments? Is it all of the above? But your team just seems to perform the third and fourth quarter, quite well when you go into the. I've even seen your team come back from games with Nashua by 3 touchdowns before a few years ago. So what is that that makes this team stronger in the second half for most games that I've seen? Did we lose him? Yeah, I think we lost him.
Coach, you there? All right, we'll try to reconnect with Coach Jackson.
I think he must have been
again.
going through a rough spot there. Is he still there?
The audio was a little sketchy. We're going to try to reconnect with Coach here in just a moment. But Coach Jackson there laid it out. He likes the defensive line. That is a starting point for sure. And we've seen, that unit perform for him in the past. And then he mentioned the quarterback as well, a veteran there that has been, in Coach's words, really the center of what they're trying to do. So I'd imagine, and again, we're trying to reconnect with Coach Jackson here momentarily, but I'd imagine he's going to rely on some of the fundamentals tomorrow night against a very good Pinkerton team on the road.
Well, if you're going to face Pinkerton, you're going to need a good defensive line. So I'm sure that if you don't have a good defensive line against that wing T offense, you're going to really struggle the whole night. So. And I do agree with Mike that Kip's got his team, loaded up here right now. Is that they seem to be playing their best football right now. And when we were looking at games earlier, that was a game that was certainly on my target list. You kind of work things through, and but that was a game that if they were playing later on, I'd love to cover that one as well. You got to give Pinkerton the edge clearly. I don't know the health report on Pinkerton. We're going to find that out tomorrow night. But with Morris and Isaac in, I would say that really ramps up their chances. But if you've got a good defensive line and you can slow the penetration down and maybe get a few breaks, get a few turnovers or whatever, Kip as I said, it's a strong second half team. One of the things I also noticed, Nick, about Kip is he develops his school. You see the progression. Very similar to actually both of these teams are very similar. You see it with Kip Jackson. You also see it with Coach O'Reilly.
I should be back in civilization in a second. Are you guys there?
All right, I'm going to finish.
We are, Coach.
I'm going to finish my comment with Nick, so your head can just swell like this, Coach. But Coach Jackson does a great job, as Coach O'Reilly, developing quarterbacks throughout the season. They get better and better, and you can see them. Their execution runs higher and higher, and that lends well to the staff and everything else. You can brag about your staff if you want, because I know you're not going to brag about yourself. But that is the fact, Coach, that your quarterbacks I've seen throughout the years really develop throughout the season. What's the recipe that goes into that on your team?
Yeah, definitely not me. Especially if you've ever seen me throw a football, it's our we've been blessed with number one, really good kids who are tough-minded, who don't mind being coached and have a lot of ability. And we've also been blessed with great offensive coaches. Coach Miranda does a great job with the quarterbacks, and C. Hill has definitely gotten better over the last 2 years.
Yeah. Before we lost you, I was talking about your team not giving up, coming out in the second half. What's the recipe that goes into that, Kip? That this team, it never count you guys out, because I've just seen you guys come from deficits before, and now playing your strongest football. That's key. You got to go in there and what goes on at halftime to just inspire these guys? Is it self-done or a combination of both? Adjustments? What is it?
Yeah, I mean, what I was saying before I broke up is it definitely isn't my halftime speeches. It's the kids have a pretty solid mindset, as well as the fact that I think we do a pretty good job of with adjustments, trying to stay
Looks like we're going to lose them again.
That's okay.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
try to
unfortunate.
reconnect with Coach here. We're almost about to welcome in
Out
Scott
of
Knight
time,
here
yeah.
momentarily as well. But
Well, Nick, let
if we
me
can
throw something
speak,
to you, Nick. Really, let me throw something to you.
sure.
What do you think that Coach Jackson's got to do? What are the keys that you see in this game coming up? I've got a few ideas of my own of what Merrimack has got to do. Obviously, they've got to jag some turnovers. What are your thoughts? I mean, when you look at this game coming up this weekend, I mean to put you on
Well,
the spot.
that's your
That's my
job to
job.
answer that question.
All right.
Right.
Well,
It's
then
my
I'll say
job
it.
to ask that question.
I'll set myself up. Well, you know, I was going to ask Kip that, so I figured I'd
Right.
ask you. So I'll give you my answer on it. To me, Nick, they've got to stop Pinkerton in the first drive. If the first offensive set that Pinkerton gets, the defense has got to get inspired. I think that's really really key. They got to come up with a big stop, maybe a sack, maybe tackles behind the line, or even a turnover or something of that nature to really
Right.
inspire that defense to say we're here. We can man up to these guys. And the second thing is you got to me is they've got to if their defense is strong, try to stay in the game as long as you can. Don't take too much risk offensively, and find out is this can they defend your pass with a couple of just go really really slow and steady on the risk meter of your
Right.
offensive play calling to kind of read them. And I think those and special teams are going to come into a play as well. Don't give the ball to those two guys. If they are both kick returners tomorrow night and are healthy, don't ever let them run the ball. Do a kick return a kick. That's my thoughts. At least
I would simplify it even further. If you're an underdog, you have to win the time of possession battle and you have to win the turnover
yep,
battle. So you
yep.
go 2 for 2 there, you may find yourself in the game. All right, let's bring in Scott Knight. He's going to be on the sidelines tomorrow night in Amherst, technically a home game, but at a neutral site in that first round in Division One against crosstown rival Bishop Girton. Coach, thank you for coming back on. How are you tonight?
Great. Thanks for having me. A little better than last time.
Yeah, I was about to say we could actually see you this
Over
time.
gas station, guys.
Yeah, last time we connected a few weeks ago, you were gracious enough to call us on your ride home. So I'm glad to see you nice and settled here to begin. All right, Coach, your team started the season undefeated through 7 weeks, and then we're on the wrong side of the final score the last 2 weeks. As the playoffs approach, is your team putting the last couple of weeks in the rearview mirror? How do you move forward? And what do you think about Bishop Girton in a week 1 rematch tomorrow night at a neutral site? I know it's a lot of questions there in one, but how's your
Yeah.
team feeling? I guess I'll sum it up on the eve of the
Uh,
big playoff game.
I think we feel great. I mean, yeah, we put that in the rear view. It's playoff season now, so this is for real. Not that those other games weren't, but we hit a bump of the road last week. Bedford was for 3 quarters. I mean, we go down 14-0, and it was 14-14 in the third quarter, and
Right.
they drove and scored, and we weren't able to respond, and then they popped another one in, and we had a snap on a punt. Things kind of unraveled a little bit in that fourth quarter, but for the most part, our effort was really good. Last week was really just one of those. Just we've all been involved in those strange games, and it happened. We've been on the other end of it, and to be on this end, it was actually a good wake up call, I think, for everybody. And we weren't. It's not like we weren't focused for that game. It was. They had some distraction. It was senior night and all that, but that's but we didn't play with great discipline, and we made some really big mistakes and allowed them to do what Central went in trying to do was just smart, to use the whole clock and just keep the ball out of our hands, and then we were kind of playing like trying not to lose, instead of just letting it all hang out and having fun like we usually do. So I think this week has been a great week of practice. A lot of energy. I think the kids feel great about it. There's some challenges with this Girton team because of they run a couple different offenses. The 1 second they're in double wing, straight T, run super power, and doing a few things off that, and then they're back in spread and chucking it around, and they've gotten better at that. I think as it's gone on. I think the Bowen kid is really improved a lot week after week. So that's something that you definitely have to, be prepared for all that stuff. So it posed some different challenges, but the kids have responded great. I think we really had a really, really good week.
Yeah, that's good to hear. And that was going to be my second question was how did the kids themselves respond to that Goffstown loss? But it seems like everybody's looking forward. You're in a little bit of a unique situation, Coach. Your team is hosting a playoff game at another school this weekend because of the construction going on at Stello Stadium. Does that factor
Yeah.
into the preparation at all, or how does that change things up for your team having to play at a neutral site as the host school?
Really no factor at all. It's just a 15-minute difference, really, in terms of like we're going to go up the street to the stadium, or we're going to just hop on a bus and go for a quick ride down 101. It's a great facility. The field's really nice. It's in great shape. So yeah, that shouldn't really be a factor at all. Home away from home. Heck, the other day we practiced in Nashua North on Tuesday because of the voting. So we're like, we're a team without a home. So, but back to school yesterday and today, and but yeah, that's not not gonna be a factor at all, really.
And how about the health of your roster, Coach? Because that's important as well, as we know, and sometimes can be overlooked. Is everybody 100%? I know this time of year you're going to have kids that are nicked up, banged up and bruised up, but are you pretty much as close as you can be to fully healthy going into tomorrow night?
Yeah, I mean we're pretty much fully loaded. I mean Josh Tripp got an ankle right now, but close. And when the first time we played these guys, we didn't have arguably one of our best players, Kyle Emmons, and it took him a few weeks to get into his groove, and he's done that, and now he's looking really good on both sides of the ball, so that's a big plus. And but Josh Tripp is close, so he will be back. Aside from that, we've had, like everybody else, we've had some kids miss practice because of sickness and things like that, but nothing major. We're ready to roll, pretty much fully loaded. And we've been very fortunate all year with that stuff. And so, yeah, it's playoff time. So, we got all our guys ready to roll.
Steve?
Coach, congratulations. Regardless, last week, whatever. Sometimes if you're going to go into playoffs, it's good to be tested like that and get yourself. But one of the things that is just overall a great season. So congratulations to you and your guys and your staff and everything else. Shame, obviously you lose Stellos, but it sounds like everybody's perfectly fine with that, ready to go. One thing is both teams would be kind of playing at home in this case, as far as the proximity of the field. So what is it? You're right. What does it really matter? I agree with you on as far as the field is concerned. That field was in great condition. You could tell. One of the things I was going to ask you about, what is it about North, South, and BG when they play each other? They're just you don't have to do anything to get jacked up. Is it just the history that goes behind all this, or what? Because I could imagine you guys are raring to go.
Yeah, I mean they're raring to go. Let's face it, it's a cross-style rivalry, just like North.
Yep.
I don't. Our kids aren't as tuned into like the whole history of the old Thanksgiving Day game, Girton and D2, and all that stuff. But we just see it as just another crosstown rival now, and also a league game. Like a yearly game. We used to just be, an exhibition game on Thanksgiving that was kind of for pride and kind of like a homecoming for everybody. So it's not hard to get these guys up for this game, but it's not because of that old history or anything. It's just really because of our current situation that they're just another crosstown rival. and and they're in our conference, and they're in our way to get to the next round.
Yep, I agree. What is it? You talked a little bit about them progressing. Quarterbacks progress for BG. They've improved on their utilization of multiple offense. Do you think that makes it a lot harder, or to be, or is it more difficult for the defense? I would assume it would be a little bit to prepare for that. And how do you see your guys? Do you study that all week? Do you split it in half? Do you guess? I mean, how do you work that through on the defensive practice end of things?
I mean, you gotta look at it two ways. You gotta look at it as, okay, when they're in their heavy sets, their full house, we got to be doing this, and when they're in their spread sets, we got to be doing this. And so sometimes, they may be in a heavy set for X amount of plays in a row. We got to be ready for, they may not even change personnel and get into a heavy so we can't. We have to be prepared for that. So we work on that stuff during the week, just like anybody else would. All the different situations and short yardage and third long stuff, things like that. So hopefully we cover all the bases. That's the goal when we practice. So, but it doesn't mean they could come out and they could come out and wing T for all I know. I mean, anybody can do anything. Structurally, they're
read and react.
They're a too high structure 4 down, and they could come out and cover 3 or something else. This week, and we got to be prepared for everything. But we've seen when you're by the time you reach the playoffs, we've seen a lot. We've seen just about what we're gonna see, so we be able to adapt on the fly, just like anybody else. But at this time of the season, So we got to prepare for all. They bring a lot, and we need to be prepared for it. And I think we've done a good job. Coach staff has done a great job getting these guys ready, and the kids are real attentive and they work hard. So hopefully it all pays off tomorrow night.
Last question. Not only just the 3 typical phases of the game, OD and special teams, but what area, blocking, tackling, what is an area that you felt that you try to build your team up this week? Maybe strengthen the weakest link, or just continue to strengthen, something even more that you're able to. What did you look at your team this week and say, this is something that we cannot escape? We've got to get better at this. What would that, if you were going to tell us, what would that be?
Yeah, definitely. The call to arms this week was just discipline, really. Because defensively, we're. I think if you watch us, you could say, well, Central was able to run the ball inside for a period on you guys. BG the first time he played Goffstown, and we look at our D line, our front 4 at least. No one's really putting a dent in us. It's really if the kids are out, what we got to work on is some of our gap integrity and some of that stuff. So we weren't real disciplined in terms of that last week. So the focus this week was we got to get back to basics. We got to make sure we're just stay disciplined and slow down a little bit and get to where we're supposed to. Because when we do that, the kids are playing great D. And we could I could harp on it last week all I want, but the fact of the matter is that I could say as bad as we played, and we didn't play great last week, but we still gave up 14 points. Yeah, but the problem is that we gave one of those non-scores took up on almost the entire quarter.
I heard
us not having the ball. So
did I hear that right? It was over a 10-minute drive. That's what I heard.
Yeah, and then we stopped them at like the 1 foot line. The problem is now we're coming out of the 1 foot line. So, our playbook isn't as open as we'd like it to be. So, and then, we didn't get a first down. Then we're punting. And that's the whole field is tilted on that 10-minute drive. And then we're playing on our heels, So we just got to play more discipline. We got plenty of team speed. I love our secondary. And we have some kids that can, do some really good things. It's just a matter of just being disciplined, and that's what it's going to boil down to.
Well, I think you nailed it, Coach. In closing here, I think you nailed it as far as gap control, because that's what you lost in the third quarter against Bedford and into the first couple minutes of the fourth quarter. Is that all of a sudden? I thought you guys did a terrific job the first half there, doing very, very well at that. So the team's clearly capable of playing high level
Oh yeah,
defensive line work. You can see that very, very high level, and the linebacker core was complementing well. With the gaps that your defensive linemen were right into, and then all of a sudden in the third quarter, just that, I don't know if it was the scheme that Bedford changed, but if you guys can get that rolling, anything can happen at this point, because that you've got some strong, stout guys there with good form. I watched them, so yeah,
love our love the line. I love our linebackers. They
absolutely,
Bruno, Nate Case plays
yep,
back there, and
very
we just
disciplined guys.
yeah, it's a tough job, and we just got to play discipline. Those guys want to make plays every play, and sometimes that
Yep,
could be a
they're
bad
aggressive.
thing. But
Yeah,
yeah, we just
I'd rather tame that than try to get something out of them that they don't. I'd rather be taming that intensity, right?
oh yeah, I mean we've played. A couple of years ago we didn't have a great team, and we were good in some areas, but some games, Keene had a really good offensive line. We played them, we were just getting blown back into our linebackers, and that's not fixable. It's
Yep,
just not physical thing. But we see some of the things that have occurred this season that some of our downfalls have mostly just been like discipline and not physical. We got
yep,
plenty of speed. The kids are aggressive, and I think we tackle pretty good for the
yep,
most part. And it's just got to stay disciplined. And they're smart. They're
yep.
smart kids. I
Good edge
I have
speed too. Good speed. Yep. Well, Coach, it's always fun when South and BG play each other, no matter what, from year to year. So looking forward to. It's going to seem a little odd going to Sauhegan, calling a game with Nashua, but once the game starts, we won't even be thinking about it. So best of luck to you tomorrow, and again, congratulations on a great season, and good luck tomorrow night. I hope it's a great game, because I'm looking forward to calling it. So
yeah.
congratulations to you, and say Trevor. Trevor's impact throughout the league over these last 4 or 5 years has been huge. We hear it all the time, and the developmental skills that he's put in quarterbacks across our league has made a big difference in the level that they can play with so many programs. So give him our best as well, if you would.
I've always been real good plugging him. I'm sure he appreciates that, and
He is
we appreciate
fantastic.
it for the state. High school football in this state. It's great to have stuff like this.
Yep. Thank you.
We appreciate your time, Coach. Good luck for sure. Thank
All right,
you.
Good luck tomorrow night.
Thank
guys, have
you.
a good. All right.
You too, Coach. Thank you. That's Scott Knight, longtime head coach, over 20 years on the job. He's got them right back in the Division One hunt, and hosting a neutral site playoff game tomorrow night between Bishop Girton and Nashua South. That happens to be our game of the week as well, presented by Beals Insurance. 6:30 is the kick. 6:15 is our pregame coverage. Steve, your final thoughts on what was another productive show here on the eve of the tournament?
Yes, I meant what I said about Trevor. Obviously, the impact he's had across the league in so many areas of just teaching the finer points of the game. I've seen the footwork improve. I know the quarterbacks that work with him, and you can definitely see the dimensions of skills that they have, and the confidence that exudes from the success that they get from that has been really exemplary. And Trevor's had truly had an effect on Division 1 and 2 football across the state, because when you got a quality quarterback play on offense, I'm an offensive guy. It just makes it so much more fun to call a game, because these guys are playing at a high level, reading defenses. It just helps the coaching staff so much if these guys go get special skills that they can bring back here in August every single year. So as far as this tournament is concerned, I wish we could do a couple more of these games, but everything just kind of happens. Most games are Friday night. I'm looking forward to this game. As the week has gone on, it's kind of elevated in my. It's just, boy, both of these teams get on track. Either one of these teams comes through with a win tomorrow night, and they really show they're on track. They could give London, I believe it'd be Londonderry next week. They could give them a good show. Londonderry is going to be tough if they come back feeling good and they're healthy. You add that to what they were able to accomplish against Exeter, Nick, and you have those guys back in the game, healthy and playing strong. We have got a war on our hands. I'm going to say with 6, probably 8 teams. I'm going to say there's 4 iron, two almost right there, and then 2 teams that could really make a run for it. You never know what happens. The weather gets cold. If this weather changes, the whole style of football that you play could rise up and have a positive effect on your ability to knock off one of the iron teams. So, I again, like we said earlier, Nick, in closing here, I just think I hope they don't mess with this thing, because I think it's really working, and it's giving this preliminary round is giving more teams an opportunity with one more week of development to have another shot, and I just think it's making it very, very exciting. So, looking forward to calling the game with you.
We sure are. All right. I want to thank our guests, Mike Lockman making his debut on
Great
our
job.
program. We
Great job.
appreciate that. The co-host
He
of the
was great.
Ninth State Sports Show. And, of course, he was also the former coach at Sauhegan. And we
We're going to get
appreciate
Kip Jackson. We're going to
Jackson.
get Kip Jackson a hotspot. We're going to get him a hotspot for his car. We'll give him one of our cellular communicators, so he can, because we don't want to miss what he has to say. One of the most enjoyable guests to have on.
Some tough issues with the connection there, but we'll get Coach back on for sure, and we appreciate him taking the time tonight for Merrimack. They will play Pinkerton tomorrow night, and of course Scott Knight, always good stuff there from the longtime head ball coach at Nashua South. I want to thank our sponsors as well: Beals Insurance, MG Sports Fundraising, the New Hampshire Tomahawks, and Colonial Printing. For our director, Ben Beals, and executive producer, Steve Beals, my name is Nick Anastas, saying so long. We'll see you tomorrow night in Amherst. This has been a presentation of FNL Gridiron, presented by Beals Insurance.